Sometimes I catch myself wondering what makes a good communicator or speaker. Then I realize it is authenticity and passion. Authenticity and passion. What's up, YouTube? Communication. We spend a good deal of our waking moments, good deal of our lives communicating, isn't it? We communicate in various manners, various mediums, and in various ways. Sometimes we are conscious of that, and sometimes we are not. So given that we communicate in so many ways, using so many medium and so much of our lives, maybe we should look at what we could do to improve our communication skills, isn't it? Well, in this video, that's what we're going to do, or at least that's what I'm going to try and do. I'm not an expert in this field, but I have had a few experiences and I'd like to share that. I've learned a few things in my own career, in my own life, not just in the software field, but in other areas as well. And because people who know me and have sort of spent time with me have in many ways given me feedback in odd manners that essentially says there is something about the way I talk or the way I explain things to people that has a huge impact on them. And this is not just in software, it's, whatever else, I do. So I sat back a few years ago trying to understand what is it that I'm doing or what is it that I feel that others are not doing and are doing. So I'm feeding off of some people who are also good communicators. And I try and incorporate that in what I do when I communicate. And conversely, if I see somebody doing something they shouldn't be doing, then I'm making sure I don't do that. So again, I'm not some sort of an expert in this field, but I want to share with you specifically to do with sort of the career, when you're at the workplace or these days, because we are spending most of our time on probably software, meeting software, where we either just hear each other's voices or maybe in some cases video and voices. So I'll talk a little bit about that area as well. But mainly it's about communicating with your peers, communicating within a professional organization. And maybe you can use some of that to communicate with your family, with your friends. I'm also going to be touching on public speaking. For those of you who are interested in wanting to be public speakers, then I'm going to be sharing some of my experiences there as well. If you don't want to or don't intend to or don't plan to be a public speaker, I'm going to say, why not? Why shouldn't you be? So I would highly recommend people who are trying to be good communicators to put themselves out there, and yes, maybe the first few times you're going to fail drastically, but that's how you're going to learn, right? You're not going to learn a thing without failure. So the only way to learn is to fail and learn from the failures and move forward. If you think you can prepare yourself for the very first speech or the very first whatever and you're going to be a blast on day one, at least in my experience, that's not happening. It has to come from a lot of experience. So you need to get that experience. Okay, so the first question should be, why should we improve our communication skills? Certainly at the workplace, but even, as I said, with your friends and family and other people, maybe you're looking to talk to an investor or, I don't know, a prospective employer in an interview, right? So these tips that I'm trying to impart today are sort of going to help you in various areas of your lives, I hope. I'll also share some anecdotes from my own personal experiences. Maybe some of that will ring a bell in your minds. I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences. You've probably not paid attention to it, like I didn't for many years. I just thought, it's just somebody trying to be nice to me or something. But because it happened so many times that I had to eventually kind of sit back and say, like, this is not like a coincidence, right? So anyway, I'm going to share some of my anecdotal experiences over the course of this video. Hopefully that's not boring to you or hopefully that inspires you to look back at your own lives and see what has transpired in your past, to extract from that and use that, analyze it, and use that for your own benefit. So why improve our communication skills? Essentially, better communication gives you better influence. What is influence? It's a very broad term. I'm using it in a very broad sense. It's many, many things. Influence in terms of you are able to change people's minds. Influence in terms of people are willing to listen to what you have to say. Influence in terms of people following you because you're doing something. Many, many ways. But hopefully it's all being used in a positive sense. Right? You don't want to influence people in the negative sense. It also plays a big role in your career, in promotions. And there are many aspects. I'll talk about that as far as promotions are concerned. Also, there are many aspects to it, not just better communication, but there are many other things. So if you want to be understood, if you want to be able to explain, if you want people to hear what you have to say at the workplace, in your family, amongst friends, communication is the key. So I'm going to hit upon some basic communication skills that you need to improve right off the bat. I think I see this a lot amongst a lot of people at the workplace, in my family, amongst friends, on TV. Well, not so much TV, but YouTube. And if you can make those minor adjustments, they may not be easy to make, but they're minor in the scheme of things. I think immediately it'll be a game changer for you. The fillers you use when you talk, the ums and the ahs and the, whatever, the fillers, right? Even whatever, by the way, is a filler. I use something like, sometimes, but I'm not I check myself, but mainly there are people who use, a lot. Or like, these are all fillers. And what I would recommend in place of these fillers is just pause. Pausing is extremely powerful. You can use pausing to your advantage. You can use pausing to get people hooked. Because if you're saying something, and one of the sayings I use a lot would be something like common practice. You see how you're waiting. If you haven't heard the phrase before, you're wondering what? What about common practice, right? Common practice is not common sense. So two things have happened. One is I've kept you on the hook, but you're also able to catch up with what I'm saying. Common practice. Okay, common practice. You're starting to get examples in your head of common practice. I've not just said it as common practice is not common sense. Like, that won't make sense to anyone. You might have to hear me 4 or 5 times. Even then, the impact is not going to be as great as the way I say it with a pause. So you can use pauses extremely potently. Now, you don't want to overdo it, but I use it a lot when I speak, even when I'm making my videos, when I'm on a call with people, when I'm in person, when I'm speaking in the public. This is a very powerful tool. So rather than using the ums and the ers and the knows and the whatevers, the likes, just pause. It gives you a moment to think and rephrase your sentences of whatever you need to do. I'm not sure why exactly you say like or whatever. But pause. Okay, that's the first thing. I think, so I've been told by colleagues at work, Shiv, every time you come on the phone, people just stop and listen. Why is that? I said, like, how would I know? But it happened, so many people saying similar kinds of things, including my managers and people who are not even on my team. I got thinking, like, I don't know what it is that, like, what could I be doing? I'm just saying what, is on my mind. What I realized then is I'm saying it in a clear, succinct manner. There are no fillers. People are able to continue their train of thought because I'm speaking in a very streamlined fashion. I'm not adding the ums. The moment you say the ums, and I can speak for myself, when I hear people saying ums and the likes, my mind is on a tangent. You're not keeping my attention. And now it's giving me, if I was the listener, an opportunity to kind of butt in, if you will. Because my mind's gone off on a different tangent. So I'm thinking of something else while you're speaking of something else. So it's best to speak in a clear, concise manner. And concise is key. You don't want to kind of meander and kind of get to the point. I know in school, my history teacher would say something like, I don't know if you guys how it goes today, especially in India, but back when I was in school, history was something like, okay, explain in 500 words why blah, 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 whatever, some historic event or his historic person said something or did something or whatever. In 500 words, I can tell you that in a sentence. And I would. And my history teacher would say, Shiv, you're sending me telegrams. So, of course, there's a fine line between being overly concise, especially when you're talking about something for the first time with a new group of people. If you're talking with your team and they've heard you before and, again about the same thing, then yes, of course, be as concise as you possibly need to be. But when you're speaking to another set of people who never heard you talk about that one thing, or are not really familiar with that subject or whatever the topic of discussion might be, you might have to be a little less telegraphic. But certainly you don't want to meander. You got to be very clear in the way you speak and be streamlined. Imagine yourself learning about something. You start here, you go there, you go there, you go there, you go there, and you get here. You have to know how to formulate your sentences, your conversation, to make it as a progressive, start to end, beginning, middle, and end, rather than going. If you've seen some of those movies, the non-linear movies, they'll start at the end, then they'll go back to something in the middle, then they'll go back to something in the front, and they'll come back to the. You can't speak like that if you want to be understood. Okay, people don't have the time to piece it all in their heads. You need to speak in a way that they are forming a picture. At least that's what I'm trying. I don't know what other people do. Especially when I'm talking about something technical or, dietary based. Oh, by the way, speaking of diets, in case anyone's interested here, I have been fasting since the last video I made. So that's 2 weeks, water only fast. I plan to do it for another 2 weeks, so basically a whole month of water only. If you are interested in this sort of thing about diet and health and all that, please visit my other channel on Living with Intent. I'll put a link in the descriptions below. Okay, that's that. Don't want to bore anyone here in the technical field. And now I lost my train of thought, what I was talking about. Okay, yes. It depends on what the field is, but for me, I always try and, because I'm picturizing in my head, I'm constructing a thing in my head, and as I'm constructing it from the ground up, I'm starting to explain that. So that I'm going in a flow, in a certain flow that is going to help you understand what this thing is. I'm not jumping around. I'm speaking slow enough to give you the opportunity to catch up, especially if it's new to you, if something is new to you. I have to be cognizant of who I'm speaking to, if it's a crowd of people I'm speaking to, if it's managers, let's say, who are not so technical or maybe used to be technical. You have to know your audience and speak accordingly. Now, you can only do those kinds of things if you know your subject. All right? Also want to tell you, when I first came to the US, I think a lot of Indians they speak very fast. And I certainly did. And when I came here, people were trying to lip read. I'm not sure what they were trying to do, but they're like looking at my lips trying to understand, what is he saying exactly? And in fact, one of my CEOs says, Shiv, you're speaking too fast. I can't read your lips. I said, why are you reading my lips? She said, because I can't understand what you're saying. So be cognizant if you're working offshore for a team that's onshore in whichever country, if you're in India, for example, or if you're coming from other ethnic backgrounds, other countries, I'm not sure, whatever the difficulty people might have with your accents, those are all things you need to consider, right? Okay, so speaking of and understanding and knowing your topic so that you can talk to different groups of people. You can talk to the junior dev, the mid dev, the senior dev. You can talk to your leads. You can talk to the managers. You can talk to the CEOs. They each require a different level of depth, but a different focus, right? Managers are more interested in benefits and time. CEOs might be more interested in cost and savings or what that product fetches if it's a product. So you have to be able to twist and turn the same thing to different people based on what their focus is. And you need to understand that focus. I mean, you need to have done that before you go and talk to your managers, before you go and talk to your CEO, for example. Start getting caught kind of off guard, right? Talking about advancements in your career and promotions, demonstrating or being a good communicator and people recognizing you're a good communicator is key. I know many people are saying, but in this company, I'm never going to get promoted. And I'm thinking, it's not because there's some prejudice against you or whatever your ethnic background may be. It is because you are not communicating. They cannot have people in management positions unless you are a good communicator. That's just it. If you're an architect, I can tell you what. If you're an architect and you don't communicate, you need to go and talk to your team and ask them if you are doing a good job of communicating. Okay? It's most likely that they're going to say you're not, which means you need to improve your communication skills. You need to get this constant feedback from your team because as an architect, your primary job is communication. You're communicating the design and the architect to your teams. You're making sure they understand what it is they're doing and why they're doing it so that they are buying in to your recommendation. It is not a I do because I said so job. Architecture is not about just putting the foot down and saying it's my system, my architecture, you shall do what I tell you. No, it's about communicating your design to your team in such a way that they are buying in. You need their buy-in. You need them to be sold on your design. You need them to be sold on what it is they're doing and spending their day in and day out. That team will be a force to reckon with if you communicate your intentions, your reasonings, and you're open to their feedback so that you can improve your design. I know many architects, they just say, this is my system, I've designed it, just do what I tell you. No, that's not what an architecture is. An architect's primary job is communication. Communication to the team, communication to the stakeholders, upstream, as to why your design, why your architecture is the right architecture for whatever it is that you're trying to build. What benefits it gives the business from a monetary standpoint, maybe from a business advantage standpoint, and all those things, and for the team from a technical standpoint, right? But along with communication, there are some other things that could influence your ability to advance in your career, getting promotions. One of my bosses in a previous job said, Shiv, dress for where you want to be, not where you're at. Or something to that effect. Essentially what he's saying is if you're in a certain position and you want to get to that next position, how do people in that position dress up? You need to dress like that now. So people will perceive you to be there. Right? But I think it's a lot more than that. It's not just about dressing. It's about how you carry yourself. I mean, are you going to sit down, and slouch, or are you going to be sitting up straight? When you walk, do you walk with your shoulders kind of caved in, or do you walk, with the shoulders back? When you stand and talk to people, are you straight? Or are you kind of like, oh God, at the end of the day, Body language. Body language is, I don't know enough about body language at all, but I know there's a lot of influence. And that's one of the ways we communicate without even knowing it. We're communicating through body language. I could be washing the dishes and I am communicating something while I'm washing dishes. Maybe if you watched me washing dishes, you probably would think, oh yeah, I think Shiv is he doesn't like this thing at all. Or he's in this zone. He's just doing this washing of dishes, but his mind is somewhere else. I don't know. But I'm just saying, body language is key. So at the workplace, even if you are amongst friends, or family, especially when the conversation is an important conversation, important in whatever you think is important. Body language, the way you carry yourself, the way you sit, your facial expressions, all these things make a difference. How much influence you have on people depends on a whole lot on this body language. So it's not just the verbal communication you might do, but also the way you carry yourself, the way you dress. I used to be quite a bit heavier, 10, 12 years ago. And I can tell you, Now, it may sound sort of unfair to some of you who are still heavier, than you should be. It's a fact. People relate better to people who look good, male, female. And it is not a conscious thing, it's a subconscious thing. The same people who were treating me kind of okay, many years ago, started to treat me differently. When I went for interviews, it was like a whole nother experience. I mean, I was shocked, to say the least, that the same me, talking in the same manner, just had a completely different level of influence over the people I'm communicating with just because I had lost weight. It's not, I don't think, a conscious thing. It's just a subconscious thing. It just happens, And I would say the same way in the way you, hair. And, I know in the IT field, we have long hair and unkempt beards and sloppy dressing, jeans and whatever, it's up to you. But I would say if you're, depending on the company you're in, right? I can't speak for everyone's companies, but generally speaking, I would say that in the career, in the workplace, keeping yourself well groomed and well dressed and a good body weight, carrying yourself correctly, posture, sitting down, standing up, talking to people, walking, everything. It's just something you form as a habit. Once it becomes a habit, that's just how you do it. You don't have to constantly remind yourself, but it's going to take a while for you to get to the point where that becomes a habit. And a lot of women will do that, It's like, it gives the wrong signal. Like, why are you scared of me? Are you scared of like interacting with people? You're not sure of yourself. Like, I'm not sure what's going on, right? Just stand straight, keep your shoulders back. Nothing's going to happen. In fact, what you're going to do is give people a sense of confidence. Even if you're not, at least they'll see you as somebody who's confident. And then you'll start to believe it, and so on and so forth. On the subject of communication as we do today through the internet, on these meeting software, Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever, microphones. If people cannot hear you clearly, and I don't mean loudly, I'm talking about clearly, big difference, right? If they can't hear you clearly, they're not listening. If they're having trouble understanding you because there's something wrong with your audio, especially the microphone side, they're not paying attention. So it is, now I know many people who bought, and I can't really tell you the make or the model of these headsets that probably have a boom arm microphone, which is important. You don't want a microphone like the iPhone things with a ear thing and a microphone dangling over. That's not what you want. You want something that brings the microphone close to your mouth. Not in front of you, where you start hearing the P's, the plosives as we call it. P, p, p. You want to keep it here, so it's not in the front of your mouth, but it's like on the side. I should reach there. And okay, so you make a one-time investment so that people can understand what you have to say. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot. So look around, see, the people might have, if you hear people in the meeting who sound extremely clear, I don't mean loud, I mean clear, then ask them, what are you using for your headset or whatever it is that you're doing? So I think that's a very important thing. If you're on video, then certainly you need to have enough lighting. Oh, the thing is the room you're talking in. I know a lot of people, just because we have been caught by surprise, right? I mean, we didn't expect to be working from home, and maybe we don't have the space or the setup to be working from home. You need to prevent echoes, reverberations in your rooms. You need to have carpeting around you on the floor. You need to have curtains or some soft materials on the walls around you, and maybe even on the ceiling, so that it's not an echo. That echo or reverb causes your voice to be extremely difficult to understand. Even though they can hear you loud and clear, the problem is that loudness, along with the echo, is interfering with the ability for people to understand what you're saying. So be mindful of these things. This is our life, I think, for the next 6 months, maybe, maybe different depending on which part of the world you're in. But nonetheless, I mean, even if you do work from home 2-3 days in a week, then it applies to you as well. So that's important. Audio is important. It was Steven Spielberg who said, and I love this saying, he said, audio is half the picture. Get it? It's beautifully said. Of course, audio is half the picture in the sense there's audio and video, but also audio is half the picture, meaning audio has half the influence. Even though you're making a movie, audio is half the influence. The visual is the other half. So audio is key. I know a lot of people on my channel here will ask me, what mic do you use? Because they hear the difference. So if you speak clear, concise, efficiently, then there are why would you do that? Why would you want to do that? Of course, people will pay attention to what you have to say. People will remember also what you have to say. You saw I paused there. People will remember what you have to say. Pausing is very, very important when you talk because it gives people the time to catch up. It gives people the time to understand at their own pace what it is you're saying before you move forward. You'll be a lot more effective in what you're saying, as in the impact you will have on people and their ability to assimilate and their ability to listen, believe what you're saying is going to be a lot more impactful. Okay? While you're talking, your tone of voice is key. Under multiple situations, there's one tone of voice that you need to maintain. I don't mean the monotonous way of talking. I mean a certain level. I know people who are on our, Scrum calls and other times when I meet with them, they are talking as if I'm halfway across the world sometimes with some people, or I'm in another state or another city with, when I talk to some people, especially today. But if you try and project to me because I'm so far away, that's not going to help. So you don't want to project. You want to kind of talk much, much louder than you normally do, as if I talk to you like you're there. So if you're sitting there with the camera, which is like probably 2 arm lengths away from me now, then I talk to you at that level, at that volume level, that tone. All right? So there's a few things that happen with that, keeping that tone of voice. It keeps people calm. Because when you project, it makes people uneasy. Especially if you're doing a public speaking thing, you got a microphone literally right here sometimes. Or here. Yes, there's a huge auditorium of people, thousands of people in front of you. They can all hear you by the way you just talk normally. And the audio person will adjust your volume based on how you're talking. Right? So if you talk like this normally, even though there's 1,000 people in front, I was going to say 1 million people. I've never had 1 million people. I don't have that kind of influence. But if you have the microphone here or over here, if you talk normally, considering that the microphone is like, either 2 inches away or 6 inches away from your mouth, there's no reason to project. If you have a headset on your headset microphone, on your headset, same thing, the microphone's right here, no need to project. If there's microphone here, this is about 8 inches, my span is about 10 inches, so it's about 10 inches away from my mouth. I speak according to that. Because I'm looking at a camera now, I'm actually looking at you and I'm saying, okay, you're here, right? I don't need to project my voice, you're right here. That tone of voice, it turns out, is also soothing and calming because there are certain, I don't know about the sound in the voice, but there are multiple harmonics that are emitted at that volume for most people. And that somehow is more convincing, is more calming. People want to hear and listen to what you have to say because you're speaking and in that tone of voice. Be calm and be assertive. Don't get anxious, don't get whiny. And a lot of people start to whine when they're getting all worked up about, you're not listening to me, you're not hearing me, no, just be calm, assertive. Calm and assertive. Assertive meaning you are saying it something with, you mean it, without being overly aggressive. Calm, assertive. When you need to be. It's not like you're being calm, assertive all the time. But generally speaking, when you want to be heard and listened to, speak in the tone of voice that keeps people calm. If you're constantly projecting and raising your voice, first of all, you won't last a whole session. There are times when I speak like for a whole day, and I can't last a whole day if I'm going to have to project all day long. So you have to learn to be in control of your voice. Now we're going to talk about communication when it comes to IMs, emails, written communication skills, but sometimes even verbal, mainly at the workplace. Right? I'm going to give you some examples that I've had over the years so you will get a sense of what I'm saying. Let's imagine IM or email, written skills. And this could apply to verbal also, depending on how you're interacting with your people most of the time. IM, hey. Then I say, hey, are you free? Yes, I'm free. I have a question. What the heck? I mean, this probably used to be the case maybe when you were doing, I don't know, back in the day when the internet was just started and maybe there was no bandwidth and you had a text editor or, DOS screen or something. Maybe that made sense, These days, that doesn't make sense. You have a question to ask, you might just ask it in one breath. Hey, I have a question about blah, 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 and just speak it out. This going back and forth 20 times just to kind of get to the point doesn't even make sense, right? So communication, as I said, takes many forms. And of course, we use many mediums these days, but it's also about how you interact with people, either in person, verbally, or through email or through text. And then the second aspect is, if you ask someone a question, and that person has to in turn ask you a question because they haven't understood your question, then that's a signal for you to improve the way you ask the question. Most times it is because you have not brought them in the context. There's no context. You just started to say something and ask them a question. They have no idea what you're talking about. So it is incumbent upon you to give them a context and then ask the question. Even though, let's say, I'm on your team, we had a meeting in the morning, and then I've gone off to do my work. You know what I'm doing, right? As let's say you're the lead, you know what I'm doing. And then towards the end of the day, I say, blah, 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 blah is happening. You're saying, but who, where, what? Like, give the context. So on my part, I should say, hey, you remember I was working on blah, 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 and this, blah, blah, and therefore this, and now blah, 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 right? Yes, it takes time. But you know what? People would enjoy receiving your IMs. Literally, they would look forward to receiving your IMs or your emails or having you talk on the calls. It is a very powerful thing, communication. It influences many, many aspects about your interpersonal interactions with people in the teams, in at home, family, friends, all of that. So don't take these things lightly. Always bring people in the context. Ask your questions in such a way that they don't have another question to understand your question. They may have another question to dig deeper, if you will. But even that, you should have anticipated. For example, hey Shiv, I did try and this and I had got an exception. What exception? What is the message? Well, I don't remember. Well, that is not communication. If you're a dev, I can understand a user calling up and saying, I saw an error on the screen, but I don't remember it. That's a totally different thing. As a dev, if you are talking to people on your team, if you can't give that basic information about what the problem was, what type of exception it was, what the error message was, what you did, what's the point? It doesn't make sense. Now you can translate that, or you can take that and translate that into different business verticals, or depending on what you're trying to do in your life. The idea is to give full information, not just half-baked information, because you don't have the time to communicate. If you want to be heard, you need to take the time to communicate. Nobody's going to listen to you if you don't explain things correctly. So if you have a problem, say, I was trying blah, blah, blah. And when I did this, I got this exception and this was the message. Maybe take a screenshot of it. It's like one of those things you need where you think a screenshot might actually help. Extract all the information possible so that when you go to someone for help, they have no questions about what else for them to come into the frame of mind so that they can help you. Make sense? It is your responsibility as the one asking for help or as the one having trouble to provide this person with every possible information that they would need in order to be able to help you without having to ask you any more questions. But did you try this? Did you try that? Unless it's, maybe it's beyond your depth. Maybe you're a junior dev and you couldn't possibly have thought about doing that. Okay, so I'm not saying like you to beat yourself about something you could have never thought about. But if it's within your realm, you should have thought about it. But at the very least, extract all the information you possibly can and ask the question or make that statement in a way that that basic information is understood. I was working on blah, blah, blah yesterday and I did this and this is what happened. And based on that, I got this exception of type blah and had this message. Okay, that's enough. You can't just say I got an exception. What exception? What message? Bare minimum. So the idea is when you are trying to communicate with people, bring them into context, give them all the information you possibly can so that they understand, or in some cases, if you're asking for help, they can help you. If they have to ask you more questions on top of your original statement to discover better what it is you're trying to say, you have not done a good job of trying to explain or communicate that to them. Okay, so that makes sense. I'll give you a few more examples, which are, I laugh at that now because, it's like it takes me a while to understand what somebody's saying, but these are good examples. I'm going to read something I took these notes. So there's one, only two examples, by the way. So the so-and-so class is returning a different set of data and causing an issue. Okay, I know the so-and-so class part. Different set of data causing an issue. What different set of data? What issue? Is it people being lazy when they're trying to communicate? But that's the wrong thing to do. That's the wrong time to be lazy. Communication is such a key aspect of our lives. We spend so much of time communicating consciously and subconsciously that we can't afford to take it lightly. You can't make statements like XSX class is returning a different set of data. What is the different set of data? What was it expecting in the first place? What is it returning now? I don't know. I mean, you're working on the system. Yes, I mean, maybe I should be clued in. Maybe you think, you should know everything. Maybe not. It doesn't matter. Provide the context. It is expecting this, it got that. And it's causing some issue. What issue? Give me that information as well, right? What issue? Okay, then another example was, in this case, the person was asked to do a certain test, if you will. I mean, we had to figure out if the system would work on this machine or that machine or through these folders or that folder, whatever it was. So that was the basic thing that this person was asked to do. And then I got a message from this person. I performed the test on this machine and it worked as expected. I observed one thing though. The comparer is not working as expected. It's only working if the files are in the same order. Huh? It may not make sense to you, but I'm going like, what? Because for the task that the person was given to do, all I needed to hear was, it's working or it's not working. And the first sentence was, it's working. That test passed, which means our hypothesis about something has been verified. So we know we're good. All right, cool. However, I observed blah, 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 that blah. Thinking like, what? Comparer? No, I don't understand what the heck is going on. What comparer? And then I realized he's talking about his unit tests. Completely different topic. In the same breath, literally, if you want to change topic. Maybe you should use a different, you know how in IM you hit enter, that becomes one thing, and maybe you can hit enter again. Or maybe you bring me in the content. Oh, and by the way, I was doing this testing, and in this testing, blah, blah. Have you experienced stuff like this? Have you done things like this? Now, I'm not claiming that I'm faultless in my ability to communicate. I'm still learning myself. I'm just hoping to impart certain pointers here as I've learned over the years. But yes, I also have a long way to go. But these are things that I am making sure I do. And maybe that's why I'm bringing them up in this video, because I think these are simple things to fix. You want your team members to look forward to your IMs, to look forward to hearing you on the calls, to look forward to receiving emails from you. You need to communicate. If you want a promotion at your workplace, if you want your leads and managers to recognize that you are different from everyone else, communication. Okay, let's talk now about more towards public speaking, but you might be able to use that, not necessarily public speaking in the sense of, in a conference room. Maybe you're just talking to a bunch of friends or, a big family, and you're trying to influence them in some way about something, right? That's important to you. So it could apply to those things. And of course, all the stuff I talked about in the previous sort of chapter, if you will, in this video, applies to this, and vice versa. Everything I say here could also apply to your sort of professional communication. The first thing I will say, I know a lot of people want to think that they could read up and start talking about it. Read one day, understand it, next day they can start talking or start teaching it. No, it's not possible. I'm not the smartest person I know. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. But there is a problem with that way of thinking. And the problem is authenticity. I think being authentic in who you are and what you're trying to teach people is key. If you are not authentic in whatever you're saying, by that I mean, if you want to teach someone a topic, you should know that topic inside and out. If you want to talk to somebody about diet and health, you should know that. That should be inbred in you. You should be living and breathing it. Then it's authentic. If you're just making it up, if you're simply doing it for the sake of speaking or doing it for the sake of looking smart, that's not authentic, and people will see through it. People will see through it. The other reason to be authentic is, and of course with authenticity also comes a lot of practice, meaning once it's in you, once it's a part of you, that topic, that subject. Once you've been living and breathing it, it is just you. You follow what I'm saying? There is no memorization required. There's no practice required at that point. But of course, to get there, it requires a lot of practice. To get there requires that you have used that thing, you've spoken that topic, used that technology many, 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 many times over so you can speak to it, just extempo. If you're speaking on whatever the topic is, it has to be a part of you. The best speakers I've found are people who just know their subject. They are so in tune with what they're saying. You can't beat it. They have anticipated all your questions. They know exactly how to say something to get you to ask that question, and then they will answer it. That does not come with just practice. Certainly practice is required. Certainly hours and hours of practice is required. But it comes because you live and breathe and feel that topic. You live and you feel it. That is, you are completely authentic. Inauthenticity or incongruency is easily detected. People may not even realize. It's not that, oh, this guy is inauthentic. It's not clicking. You're not making a connection. They're just tuning off. They sense it. They feel it. Okay, now I'll give you some anecdotes, some real life experiences I've had from many, many years ago when I was in a different life in some cases. I'll rush through a few of them. Another life I was working, I used to be an electronics engineer, and I had a factory that manufactured electronic components for automobiles, and these were kits that I produced. So at one point, early in the morning, one of my clients, or not my clients, but a new client called up saying, "Hey, I want all our kit." It was so early in the morning. I said, "Okay, well, you tell me where you live. I'll come and install it myself, because there's no way to get somebody else to come at that point in the morning. He had to leave for his factory to go somewhere long distance, and fine." So I went there, installed, and I don't do a lot of talking. I'm not a very talkative person. At least some people might think I am, but I'm not. I don't think I am. I can talk my head off about a certain topic, but generally I'm not a very talkative person. I'm busy doing my thing, just installing this kit in his car, and I got my head on the hood, or in the hood, and he's standing by watching, not saying much, asked me a few questions every once in a while, and I'd go on. And then we had a bit of a chit chat. After I'd done, I tested the whole thing, it's working fine, and I was expecting to get paid. And he asked me a few pointed questions. He's older than me, and I was a kid at the time. I was like in my 20s. And he says, I watch you work. It's so much sincerity in the way you do stuff. I'm going to send a bunch of my friends to you. Okay, he sent 30 people. That made my day. Of course, I couldn't do it all in a day, but you know what I mean? To me, that was like the first experience I had. Because in that whole field, there were many, many experiences I had like that. Too many to even, bore you here with. But in the software area, I'd built a software product one time. This is not like I was not employed by anyone. It was my own software product. And I'd gone to talk to a certain client, a very big client. And I got my foot in the door with the father, with the main person, and he had two sons who were like my age, both part of the business. But I sort of got an introduction with the father, and so I asked him when I met him, a few days ago, prior to that, I'd like to meet you. He said, "Yeah, come to the office and we can talk." And so I got an appointment, and so now I'm at the office here talking to them. And halfway, not even halfway, maybe quarter way into the demonstration, I had a projector, and I was demonstrating the software we built, and it was all going well until one of the sons asked, saying, "Can you interface or integrate with blah 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 software?" And I said, "No, that the software doesn't do that yet." And he said, "Well, it's key for the software to integrate with the software." I said, "We don't do it at this point, and I can't honestly promise that we would make some sort of an integration between the software. That was an accounting software. This was a completely different software." I said, "But I can look at it, maybe, if it, in the future, if you want, I can look at that." Anyway, continuing on with the presentation, I was a little disappointed. I was hoping they wouldn't notice that. And then I packed up. We're still talking while while I'm packing up my projector and laptop and everything else. And then finally I thanked them for the time and shook hands and walked out. And they had their office on the ground floor, or in the US as we call it, first floor. And as I'm walking towards my car, I hear somebody call out my name. I look back. It's the father, the CEO, and he says, "Shiv, come back." And so I walked back. He says, "I want to do something with you. What can we do together?" Anyway, to cut a long story short, they became one of my biggest clients. They were a big company, and so they became one of our biggest clients. That's what I'm talking about. Sincerity, authenticity. It is key. I'll give you another story about sincerity, authenticity in the same field, in the same product kind of thing. I've gone to another customer. He said, "Well, I have to get all my people to see the software, and if they all like it, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how many people can I convince? Then we'll buy it." It was a very expensive software, so it wasn't like something to sneeze at. So now I'm in this conference room at their location, and the whole room is full, and he's right at the back, this person, the CEO. And as I'm getting the demo, he's not at all looking. He's just, he's looking, but not sort of paying attention, not asking questions. The others are asking questions. I know they're sort of involved. I'm doing my demo. I'm in my elements doing my demo. I know this product. I believe this product is going to help any company that uses it. So it's not like I'm selling them snake oil. I am fully confident about the product. I know the product inside and out. You can ask me any question about this thing. I can tell you anything and everything about it. And I totally believe that I'm selling you a good thing. Okay, so that's the sincerity and authenticity part of it. Anyway, I do the demo and I go into the office. I'm hoping to make a sale here. And so I said, hey, by the way, so are we going to sign on the dotted line? He says, yeah. I said, but you never saw the product. He says, I don't need to see the product. I was watching you all the time. And you sold me like in the first 10 minutes. That's the authenticity and the sincerity that comes out. People pick up on it. It is extremely powerful. So when you're talking about a topic, if you're feeling not so confident about the topic, then people will pick up on that. If you're confident about the topic, people will pick up on that. So if you want to be a public speaker, the first thing you want to do is understand what you're talking about. Live and breathe it. It has to be a part of you. It can't be a memorized thing. And there's another reason for memorization or not having it memorized. We have one brain, so there's one CPU core, right? Because there's one CPU core, we can only do one thing at a time. We can multitask, but that means you're stopping this part to do that part on one core. If you have to remember what to talk about, I mean, you'll see me, I'm not, even in this communication thing, I'm not a big, master at talking about this stuff. I hardly ever talk about it. But I'm speaking from my experiences. I don't need notes necessarily. I'm not reading. There's no teleprompter there, underneath the camera where people keep them. I'm just speaking. I have certain bullet points, just high level things, just so I, remember to talk about them. But I'm not even looking at that most of the time. So if you have to remember things you have to talk about, I'm talking about not the bullet points necessarily, but like the general gist of things, then a lot of CPU cycles are going to be used for that. And your focus is going to be on trying to remember these things. You know what's going to happen when you're speaking, even in front of friends or colleagues? Body language changes. Tone of voice you're not paying attention to. You're not making eye contact with the audience. You have no time left, no CPU cycles left to focus on the things that actually do matter when you're speaking. So when you're speaking publicly, the idea is the topic you know by heart. The topic is near and dear to you. It's a lived, experienced topic. You know that by heart. It's something you talk about, you dream about, you think about all the time. When you're on stage talking to people, when I'm on camera here talking to you all, I'm more focused on how I am delivering the topic, not so much on what I'm saying, as in the parts and the pieces. Public speaking is a little more challenging. I think in the camera for me especially it's challenging because I'm looking at something there's no feedback. I'm not seeing people. I'm very good at I won't say very good. I'm comfortable on the public speaking side because I feed off of the audience. And that's what you want to do. There'll be many people typically scattered across the audience who'll give you visual cues, feedback. They'll be nodding their head, they'll be smiling, they'll make some facial expression that lets you know that they're hearing and listening to you. Pick up those people across the room. So you can be looking here. So the audience from a distance away think you're looking at them, but you're looking at these few people. Maybe some people in the front, maybe some people at the back. That is key. The way you walk on the stage, the way you carry yourself, the way you dress, all those same things apply. The tone of voice, same thing applies. The subject has to be second nature. You have no CPU cycles or require no CPU cycles for the subject. All your CPU cycles should be focused on the audience and the way you deliver the speech. If you ask somebody's names, you need to remember that name till the end, or the names till the end of the day or the topic, and make sure you use their names through the speech so that you want to make it interactive. Many years ago, I had a chemistry college professor who, on her first day, asked us to tell her our names. There were 30 people in the class. And she remembered every one of them. And guess what we were talking about after we came out of class? We were saying, holy crap, this woman remembered every one of our names. It was uncanny. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I started doing that when I was doing public speaking, or when I'm doing training. I meet a brand new set of people, 30 people in a batch, and I make it a point to remember everyone's names, and I will call out the names. One, for my own practice, but two, also they feel connected. You have a question? Yes. What's your name? So and so. Okay, ask me the question. I got the name. And from that point forward, I will remember that name. And then I'll use it. I'll use it in things like saying like, okay, what do you have to say? What do you have to say? Yeah. And you, by name, what do you say? Like immediately, right? So as I learn people's names, I'll use them during the talk. Interaction is key. You can't be the one standing up on a pedestal. I'm the superior person. Therefore, you shall just listen to me, kind of thing. You want people to think you're just them. You just happen to be in the stage, imparting your knowledge. Tomorrow it will be them. And that interaction is key. Constant interaction, questioning, getting people to feel comfortable, making eye contact around the stage. All that is key. But number one is confidence in what you're speaking. You need to know that topic by heart. You have no CPU cycles left for that topic during the speech, and all your CPU cycles should be used towards how you carry yourself, how you conduct yourself, how you look at people, how you interact with people, how you make them feel comfortable. Crack jokes at yourself. I've had some incredible experiences that today look really stupid, but I will tell my team to let them feel that I'm not special. I have just learned over the years, which is where I'm at. I wasn't born with this stuff. So if I could get from there to here, so can you. People need to feel that they are not going to be left behind, that they are also capable of getting where you're at. There are a lot of people in the audience who have sort of these aspirations for being where you're at, wondering how did you get there? So let them know, hey, I can do it. You can do it. It's just that simple, but you have to say that sincerely in the sense that you have to make them feel at all times, I'm not special. I just happen to have the experience. I've done this. Therefore, I know. And now I'm here trying to impart that to you. Okay, this is the last point. Is to do with pronunciation. Now, most of us, let's say, I can speak for myself and you guys can translate that into your own, what the countries you come from, and if you're interacting with people from other countries, maybe speaking other languages, right? So if you're, let's say there's an onshore team and an offshore team, and the offshore team should be trying to speak more like the onshore team is, if that makes sense. If I'm here in the US, I come from India, we say things slightly differently in India. When I come to the US, the onus is on me to speak such that I can be understood. All right? If you're on a call with me and you're offshore and you come from, whichever country, it becomes your responsibility then to try and adapt to how we speak the majority, the main language, whatever that language may be. So I'll give you some examples between English and other languages, or maybe the way English is spoken in other countries, and so that you can understand what these examples are. So I've got them listed out here so I can just talk to them one by one. So the first one I encountered that immediately threw me off was multiplied by and divided by. In India, we say, if I said 2 into 2, the answer will be 4. In America, 2 into 2 is 1. In India, if I said 2 by 2, the answer would be 1. In America, 2 by 2 would mean 4. So this took me totally by surprise. Because you can imagine, the first conversation, how that went. People thought I didn't know how to do my simple math, right? So I had to learn. I had to learn to adapt, to that, okay, I'm living here. It's not like I'm an offshore team. I'm living here. So I definitely had to learn to adapt my way of speaking so they understood. The second one was aluminium versus aluminum. They said, why do you keep saying aluminium? I said, isn't that how it's spelled? Aluminium. They said, no. I said, no. Because the spellings are different. It's not just the pronunciation in this case. The spellings are actually different. And so, yes, today I say aluminum just because I live here. And so I don't have to be explaining myself to people all the time. So it's incumbent upon people to make certain adjustments. I was on a call one time and we were talking about, like a cache. And I'm saying cache all the time. And then one of the guys from the offshore side said cache. And I said, do you not, all this time when I've been saying cache, did you not hear what I've been saying? Just say cache. I mean, that's what it should be. So just alter the way you pronounce things. Right. So I think in the workplace, certainly this makes more sense. In a social setting, maybe it's not so important. But in the workplace, you need to be understood. Right. I mean, the reason we communicate with people is so that we are hoping to get understood, be understood. Then might as well put in the effort to be understood. So that if you start to speak a little bit more like the people you're working with or working for, the more they will assimilate you into the team and the more they'll look forward to talking to you and hearing from you. All right. That brings me to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I've not been going on too long, rambling on, and you can use some of these pointers. So again, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a few things. If you have, please give me a thumbs up and I will see you next time.